went to SIU, did cinema and photography, got the degree, and waited a year for some friends to join me, and we were gonna either go west to Los Angeles. Well, that was really all the plan we had. Let's go west to Los Angeles. And we knew our savings were gonna last about 45 minutes out there, and then we were gonna be out of money. And my friend knew of a place called Wilmington, North Carolina, and he said, they make movies there. Really? I had no idea. So, and there was no internet. So there was no looking up what movies they made there, but I trusted him at his word, and we went down. And they did have a studio there. They had built it in 1984, and there were a lot of productions going on. It had a slow period in the late 80s, and then it was picking back up in the early 90s, which is when we went down there. So the first thing I would tell you is, and less of this now, but back then it's certainly, you had to move to a place where they made movies, that you couldn't generally stay in your home area. Now I think you can, because they do digital features. You know, there's probably movies shooting within 50 miles of us, every other month, and that would be a good start. I would definitely say hook up with one of those if you're looking to get into the business. But I went down there, and an easy in to get onto a film set, which is really important, is to do extra work, which is where you're the non-speaking people walking through the background of scenes. And I will tell you this now, and this phrase, if you're going to take a note, this is the note. To work in the film industry, it's who you know, and underline that 5 times. Because everybody hires their friends. You get one job, get that first job, and you can work forever as long as you show up on time and you do whatever the work is requiring of you, you do it. And then the more people you can meet and the more people you can impress with your work ethic, the more people who will hire you. And as you work your way up, you're hoping to follow them. As they go up a level, they'll hire you for this job. And when they go here, they'll hire you for this job. And you might be able to follow somebody throughout your entire career, and they'll always be your boss, no matter how far up the ladder you're going. Sometimes they leave the business. Sometimes they have families and decide not to work in it anymore, or they change departments, or they go to Europe. And then you just have to find a new one. But I got in on a movie called Amos and Andrew, with Nicolas Cage and Samuel L. Jackson. For anybody who knew who Samuel L. Jackson was, he was just getting started as an actor. And it's not a very good movie, I wouldn't recommend it. And I'm in precisely one shot for 10 seconds that you can see me in, so don't look at it for me. But I did it from like April to June. We shot forever, and it was all nights, because that whole movie takes place in one night. And it was a great entry into the business, and I was making myself helpful to the second assistant director, and assistant directors, it's interesting. The first assistant director runs the set for the director, so if Rob was directing our movie and I was his first assistant director, he would say, let's do a rehearsal, and I'm the guy that bells it out over the set, and I'm the guy who says it into the walkie, it's time for rehearsal. And then the second AD and the production assistants scramble around and make that happen. They get all the people necessary to the set, and then the director runs the rehearsal, and again through the assistant director says, I want 4 extras in these seats, I want it completely, I don't want anybody over here, make it busy in the back, and then the action's going to take place here, and he handles the actors here, and the assistant directors do all of this. They set everything that's not the actors. And then when the time comes to roll the cameras, he sits back ready to watch. The assistant director says roll cameras. He says action. The scene plays out. He says cut. I stand by and get the word. We're going to go again. That wasn't what he was looking for. That's exactly what he was looking for. We're going to print and move on. All those announcements go out to everybody, and you move on to the next setup, and that's the day. 12 hours, repeat as necessary. The second AD is the guy that is on the computer making up tomorrow's schedule. So they put out a sheet every day, and it says, here's what we're shooting. And he's the guy that's back doing that, so he's not on set as much. The second AD, I don't know why not a third? I don't know. Canada has a third, so if you watch a movie and it says third assistant director, that was shot in Canada. We have second seconds, and what that means is it's actually not a junior second, it's another second. So when you say second, you have 2 seconds. All right. So the second is the guy that's setting all that background and and running the set for the first AD, who's running it for the director. So there's your assistant director setup. So I had ingratiated myself to the second AD on Amos and Andrew, and I was helping the caterer set up the tables for this crew lunch. I was doing everything I could do. Helpful, helpful, helpful. And she introduced me to her boyfriend who had come to visit her on set, and she said, "This is Craig Edwards, and he is one of our extras, and he has been super helpful to me, and I'm going to hire him as a production assistant on my next movie." There you go. I got on set, I showed a work ethic. Who do I know? I know the second AD. The next movie she got on was a movie called Super Mario Brothers that you guys may or may not have seen with Bob Hoskins. Yeah, do you have a question?
Oh, yeah, I see.
Oh, you've seen that. Okay, very good. Well, Cindy made good on it. It got a little further into the show, and they needed, the production was sprawling, it was huge. They needed more people. She said, "I'm going to hire that guy." She reached out to me and got me to be a production assistant on Super Mario Brothers. And that started me off. So once you become a production assistant, they used to call them gophers, because you go for this and you go for that. So you're just running all day. Back then, we had giant walkie-talkies, huge, and they had great big batteries, and they lasted for about an hour. So I had pockets full of these things, and as people needed batteries, I'm switching batteries out, I'm running to get water for the actors, I'm bringing extras to the set. I mean, you're always moving. But it's a lot of fun because it's not like you're going and sitting behind a computer and just doing this all day. You know, you're moving around and everything. And you get to see the sets, which Super Mario Brothers, if you of all the movies I'm going to talk about, yeah, check that one out, because the sets are just amazing. And they built them in an abandoned cement factory, and they're huge. They built whole cities inside of this cement factory. So you get to see all of that, of course, from behind the scenes. And you know, it's not a job. You're not told not to talk to the actors, but you're not there to, you know, buddy up to them. And you know, it's not about getting next to Tom Cruise and becoming his pal. You know, if you're working on a Tom Cruise movie, you'll see him in the morning. You might say, "Good morning, Mr. Cruise," or you might not. There, you know, Sandra Bullock did a movie called 28 Days Later in Wilmington. I did not work on it, but I stopped by to visit, and there was a letter that went out to the crew that said, "You can speak to Miss Bullock at any time. Do not ask her for an autograph, and do not ask her for a photograph. She does not like to do that while she is working. If you would like to get a photograph from her autographed, reach out to her assistant. You'll go on a list. At the end of the show, Sandra Bullock sits down and looks at the list and literally signs 80 photos, if that's what it takes, for everybody who wants one. But there's no point where you're going to be standing next to her getting that signature, because that's not how she works. And when you get to that level of an actress as big as her, she can set those stipulations. So if your idea is to get on a set because you want to just hang out with Sandra Bullock or Tom Cruise or whoever, probably not the best idea, because it's not likely that you're going to end up being their best bud. You know, you can see them at their best, you can see them at their worst, of course. Everybody's human, they get grumbly and stuff. Andy Griffith, you guys may have heard of Andy Griffith, they did a show 1,000 years ago. He did a show called Matlock in Wilmington, and I did extra work on it just to bring people who had come to town onto a set. It was easy to do that because they always needed juries. That was a lawyer show. And he was a grumpy old man by that time. So everybody loved him from his old TV show, and they thought he was a happy, folksy guy. And he's over there kind of being mean to the wardrobe girls and pinching their bottoms and doing all kinds of stuff that really you couldn't do today. But he was getting away with it in the 90s. But he was grumpy, and he'd throw his coat down. The wardrobe people have to come over and pick it up because he'd just get mad. Yeah, you know, and stalk off the set. Well, he's whatever he was, 80, you know. Their knees hurt, you know. So sometimes you see them at their worst, and sometimes they're the nicest people in the world. I don't know if any of you guys remember a show called Touched by an Angel, but Roman Downey, who starred on that show, nice little Irish girl, the sweetest woman I ever worked with. I would have crawled across broken glass for her because she was so nice. And most of them fall in between. You know, they're not the worst and they're not the best. They're just, you know, people you work with. Once you get that job, then, you know, what would happen is a show would come into town. You would hear, your grapevine would tell you, hey, whatever show, Empire Records is opening up offices. You go and put a resume in, they call you, interview. When you go to an interview, unlike other job interviews, like if you go out to a job interview here, I went the first time in a shirt and tie to the first interview I ever went to, which was for Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which was a TV show based on the Raiders of the Lost Ark movie And the first thing the guy said when I sat down, he just kind of laughed at me. He said, "I don't know why you're wearing a shirt and tie. We don't care. We want to know actually that you're going to dress comfortably for the set, and I'd rather have seen you come in here in some khaki shorts and a t-shirt and some really good shoes. That's going to impress me more than a shirt and tie, because you're never going to wear that on a set." So from that point forward, I knew, don't show up to interviews. And the interviews are really just, it's not really like they're going to go down a form of questions and, can you do this? It's not like a job interview out. They're really just seeing what you're like to talk to, and if you have the personality that they're looking to work with, and if you seem to have, what I would call the eye of the tiger, that you're going to do the job, and that you're not, for example, trying to become Tom Cruise's best friend, or that you seem like, you come late to the interview, so maybe you're going to show up late to the set. So interviews are really just, you're just presenting yourself, your personality. And then you get the job. Sometimes they start before the shooting. You work for a few weeks in pre-production. You're running around the office more than anything else. You might make runs away from the office. And then production starts and you're going to the set, whether that's in the studio or on location, and it can be different every day. And you show up usually before, 10 or 15 minutes before what you're supposed to be there, to make sure, especially if you're going to a new place, because who wants to show up and be lost and you can't find your way to the set. So you find out, get there and make sure you know where everything is, and you start working, and you don't stop until after cut, and usually you have to hang around for an hour or two afterwards. Sometimes you're getting the out times for people so that they can report and have their pay be, they don't punch a time clock. But the production department as a whole monitors all of that and takes down time. So when the electrics that do the lighting, the last electric is done, he says our out time was 10 p.m. and you make note of that and give that to one of the assistant directors, and then they can all of them put 10 p.m. on their timesheet and they get paid. So that's part of the job. So you may be there an hour or two before the cameras roll, and you may be there for an hour or two after the cameras wrap and up for the day. If you're leaving a location, it's longer because they have to pack all the equipment back up onto trucks and get it out. If you're staying in a location, you can get out quicker because they leave everything set, all the lights, and they just take off, and they have security guards that stay all night with that stuff so that nobody comes up and steals our equipment while we're gone. They build an amazing amount of stuff in. Can you bring up that Swamp Thing?
Yep.
Right now there's a series called Swamp Thing shooting in Wilmington, and they are, here's a trailer for it, we'll watch here.
Gangs are delivering guns from Tuesday. Whatever gang you roll with.
I think this is just a commercial. Here we go.
Is this it or not?
Yeah, this is it. And when you see the swamp in this, I haven't watched this to actually see what it's going to be, but this swamp is in a soundstage. This is not outside. And that's what is sometimes boggling, is how much they are able to shoot, because when they can put it inside of a soundstage, they have total control over it. And that means that it's going to be much easier to get your 12-hour day done than being out in the boonies somewhere. This suit is all practical. There's no CGI happening here. They may have redded his eyes with the computer, but that's it. And that's coming in late May. Derek Mears is playing him. He played Jason. He's any giant monster on any show in the last 10 years, it was probably Derek Mears. He did Sleepy Hollow. He did Revolution. He's done anything that's got monsters in it. He suits up for everything. And he's been in Wilmington now for several months wearing that monkey suit and shooting. So Empire Records is one that they built the record store inside of a soundstage, and if I sat down with you watching the movie, when they come up at the beginning of the movie to the exterior of it, I could sit there shot to shot and tell you that's downtown for real outside, that's in a soundstage, that's in a soundstage, that's outside. And they bump these shots up against each other, and the director of photography is so good at matching the look that you can't tell. It looks like a sunny day outside and they're in a building. And that's part of what I loved about the film industry, was that illusion. A guy's dangling from a 1,000-foot drop, and he's hanging from that ceiling right there. That's it. But they put blue screen in behind him and do all the tricks. And stunts, I never really enjoyed seeing stunts, because the first stunt I ever saw, people got hurt. Super Mario Brothers leap off of something into the back of a garbage truck, and when the stuntmen did that, something went wrong and they bounced out of the truck and they landed on cement, and they both got mangled and taken off to the hospital. And so I was always a little nervous for stunts, but stunts are fun and they're safe mostly. But when they go wrong, you know, it usually somebody gets hurt, and there's always an element of danger when, you know, any number of X factors can make that happen. So I can't say that I wasn't a little bit like this every time, because I don't want to see anybody get hurt, you know. I was around the movie The Crow, but I was not anywhere near when Brandon Lee got killed. That was not a stunt, but it was a terrible sequence of events that unfortunately killed an actor. I worked on that show in the office for about a week, long before he had passed, and I was on a different movie. I was working on a Showtime movie called The Birds 2 at the time, which was a sequel to the Alfred Hitchcock movie from way back when. Two bird movies in Wilmington at the same time, Crow and the Birds. But that one reverberated because the next show I was on was called Radioland Murders, and George Lucas, who is the Star Wars guru, or was before selling it off to Disney, was demanding that there be a gun in the hand of an actor, and they had let the guy that's in charge of guns go for the night because they didn't think there was a gun involved in the scene, and they were not licensed for it with the fire marshal. And this is literally months after Brandon Lee had been killed by a prop gun. And so George Lucas, who was one of the most powerful men in Hollywood at the time, I want a gun in that actor's hand, and somebody is standing nose to nose with him saying, "You cannot have a gun in that actor's hand. It ain't happening." Because their safety was beyond anybody's power at that time. Now, I don't know. I don't know if he might have gotten a gun into the actor's hands. Things may have slipped again, because when people don't get hurt over a course of time, of course, you know, standards will slip again. But that's the basics. When you work, you take anything. It's not, oh, I'm just going to work on big Oscar bait movies. You can't say that. So I did TV commercials, I did TV movies, feature films, cable movies, Lifetime movies. I used to have something on Lifetime. You couldn't turn the Lifetime movie channel on and not see me within a 24-hour period. Not me, but I mean, see a movie that I worked on, because I worked on so many in the 90s. I think I covered everything there. Yeah, all of the various things. And if you take them all as separate projects, and the TV episodes as separate, every episode being a thing, I did literally hundreds. If you take it as shows, I did dozens, because the episodes really, you know, spiked up my numbers. In 2001, Canada was doing so much, they had given so many incentives that everybody was taking their productions to Canada. Vancouver alone in December of 2000 or 2001 had 17 shows shooting in one city, which is, I don't even know how they were doing that without seeing each other's cameras. But so little was happening in Wilmington that I actually stepped away from it, and I've been doing other things since. I still have a hand in with some producers. I write scripts. It's not easy to get a script produced, but my scripts have been in the hands of Sam Raimi's company, who does the Ghost House pictures, if you guys like horror movies. My scripts, I just had one, a producer told me, the Starz network that does Ash vs. Evil Dead and the Black Sails, that cable network just turned down one of my scripts. Hey, that's big news. Somebody didn't like my script. And that's my only real connection. I'm working with a stuntman who's doing some shorts that are going to be on Vimeo or YouTube, comedy slapstick shorts. So I'm feeling like I need to get my foot back into the realm of it a little bit. I don't see me going full-time back to it, but it scratches an itch, to be on a set. I gotta tell you, I went to visit the set of Swamp Thing. I have friends who are makeup artists on the show, and they invited me, and I went out to see it. And I walk onto our local university, and they have turned it into the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. Signage everywhere. I mean, I thought I'd somehow magically appeared in Atlanta. And Adrienne Barbeau, who was an actress who had been in the Swamp Thing movie in 1982, they had brought her in to be on the show as a little nudge to the fans. You know, hey, here's an actress you remember. So I went to visit with her and spent the day watching her act on the show and seeing these spectacular sets. I did not get to see Derek Mears in the suit, unfortunately, because Swamp Thing was not running around the CDC. But it really kind of awoke the need to be on a set again, which is why I hooked up with my stuntman friend and try to get back in a little bit. But that's the basics. Any questions that you guys have of any kind, I'll be happy to answer. About, what does that guy do? I've seen that job in the set to, where are the best places to go? Other questions about how to get into the business, whatever you've got, I'm happy to answer.
I'm sure they have questions.
You would think,
I'm
I would hope.
convinced you have an opportunity to find out inside info about acting, filming. Who's got a question for Craig?
Anything at all? Yes?
What was like a normal pay for you? Like,
When I was doing it back then, if you did extra work, I'll give you kind of the variances. An extra got $50 a day. They would just say 50 a day. But they broke it down. Everything has always been and always will be broken down to per hour. And what's neat about the movie industry is, interesting, if you're not a producer, it has to lay this money out. When they said 50 a day, when you showed up to the set and signed in as an extra, you were guaranteed $50. Now let's say they only had one scene to do with you and they shot you for 2 hours and they let you go. You still got $50. Technically you were making $8 or $6 something an hour, which over 8 hours would be $50. You work for 2, they don't just give you 12, they give you the 50. You show up on the set, you sign in, and it starts a rain thing and you're outside, they can't shoot, they can't use all of you. You're dismissed, $50. They called for 100 extras, they can't shoot, they gotta shoot tomorrow. You go home with $50 in your pocket, it comes in the mail later, but you know what I'm saying. And they just laid out whatever that is, 5 grand, 50 grand, whatever that is. They just laid it out. And that's why movies cost so much, is things like that. And so that was extra work. As a production assistant, I made generally $100 a day. And that was 25, almost 30 years ago at the beginning. And it hadn't changed very much by the end when I got out in the early 2000s. $100 a day worked out to about $12 an hour. And there were some guarantees, but it wasn't quite the same. Very seldom were you ever going to get dismissed. It would be a rare thing to shut down a production for the day. Did have it happen. The Twilight Zone TV movie, the director tripped over a bulldozer. Don't know why. Bright yellow. Think he could miss it? He didn't. He broke his arm. They let us go for the day. I did get paid for that day. That was rare. What that really cost the production, they had an actor named Jack Palance who was in the movie. He was making $250,000 a day for 3 days' work. So they were giving him nearly $1 million to appear in this movie for 3 days' work. When the director tripped, it added a day to Mr. Palance. So not only did they have to give me my $100 for the day, they gave him his $250,000 for the day, and then paid him for the rest of the work. So $1 million instead of $750,000. The further you move up, if I had gotten, I did some non-union assistant director. I did make it up to second, and second on a couple of shows. And that's where you can see some credits for me. Stephen King's The Night Flyer is one. And a movie called Shadrach, which is about a black man returning to the home where he was born 99 years before to die on the same land that he was born on. It's actually a neat little drama. And I'm credited as a second on that. Had I gotten into the Directors Guild and gotten it at that time, I would have been making somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000 a week for 5 days or sometimes 6 days work. That's pretty good money, and that's a big jump from 100 a day. You're going from 500 a week to 2,500 a week or 3,000 a week. So a second AD would have probably been making 3,500, and a first AD was probably making 5 grand a week. So you get up to that level, you're making some money. Now here's a neat thing. The first assistant director in the Directors Guild, when they do a TV show, they get residuals like an actor does for the rest of time. So every time an episode airs that a first AD was the first AD on, he gets another bump of money. It comes in the mail for free. I mean, he doesn't have to do anything to ask for it. It just shows up. And I'm actually still getting residuals from 2 speaking roles I did almost 30 years later, and I just got a check. Now they're not, it's a dinner out. It's not, I'm not going to retire on it. But you get $20 in the mail for nothing, something I did 30 years ago, bring it. I'll take that all day long. And directors and first ADs get that. Here's another wild one. If you do a pilot for a show as the first assistant director, even if you never work, or director, you direct the pilot of it, so the very first episode, say the director of this, let's say he doesn't like working on it. Yeah, that show was horrible. I'm never going back to that show. But that show runs 7 years and they do 100 episodes. He gets money for every episode they shoot because he had a hand in why it worked. So he gets residual money for every episode for the run of the show. Never has to set foot back on the set, be off doing his other jobs, be on vacation. And he's still going to get a significant amount of money for every episode that airs. I never got quite to that level. I wish I would have, because that'd be some pretty sweet money coming in. Actors, of course, it's a negotiation. There's a SAG, Screen Actors Guild minimum. At the time that I worked, it was $982 a day. And that was predicated on an 8-hour day. And you got overtime, you got meal penalties if they didn't feed you at the right time. I did a 2-day role on a show called American Gothic. They brought me in Friday afternoon. I shot for a while. They wrapped me, and then they brought me back Monday morning, and I did another. I worked for a total of about 6 hours, and then I went and did an hour of putting my dialogue back in a sound studio. What it was is the shot started on the back of my head, and I was kind of moving a little bit, and they said, well, say something, because they can't see your mouth stop moving, and they had me add a line that clarified what was going on in the scene. So I got roughly $1,000 for Friday, $1,000 for Monday, again, 6 hours work total. And when they took me over and had me do the 1 hour, I got another $250 for the hour of adding the line to the back of my head. So $2,250 for 7 hours work. All day, every day. Please, let me have that money. And the SAG minimum has definitely gone up. I don't know what it is anymore, what you would get as a SAG, and that's what they call scale. That's when you don't have anybody negotiating on your behalf, and you're just gonna be the top number 3, or guy who screams and runs off. That's how you're identified in the cast list. Of course, if you're a lead, you'll have an agent and a manager negotiating, and they're gonna get you as much as they can get, because the more you get, they get a percentage of it. They get 10% or 20% of your take. So if they can get you $100,000 per episode of a show, they're going to get that, because then they're going to get $20,000 for that. So the money could go literally through the roof if you are able to be who they want to star in a show, for example. So, anything else?
Other questions?
Anything?
What's the most frustrating part of the job?
Sometimes it's hard to work for assistant directors who are idiots. They got the job because of who they know. Remember, it's who you know. So they know a production manager, or a production manager doesn't think they do a bad job, so they hire them. And they hire you, and that's great, but you get on set, and you realize they don't know jack squat about what they're doing. And what they'd have is they hire good production assistants who run around and do enough of the job to make them look good. And it's hard to work for 6 weeks, 14 hours a day for somebody you don't respect, but you also can't walk off a show. You shouldn't. You should stick it out, because you're going to run into people you don't like, and you can't, you don't want to, well, gee, don't hire me because I may not like you. You don't want to get that reputation. So you stick it out, and sometimes it's hard. I have been screamed at. Screamed at in ways that would make you want to fall into the corner and cry, but you just take it and you move on. I made a mistake on several shows. First several shows I did, I carried a walkie with no headset, and I just walked around. It was open, so when they talked to me from the set, anybody around me could hear it. 2 different times, an actor heard an assistant director speaking of them in less than glowing terms, and I got ate up for that. I got brought to the set, and the first AD reamed me one way to the other, and then somebody would bring me a headset, and they'd say, put this on, and if the first AD sees you without that on, you're fired, because the actor gave them junk, because they said something about them being, oh, I can't believe they're not coming out of their trailer, what a moron, or something like that, and then the actor heard it, because they were just coming out of the trailer right when that was said. So after those 2 things happened, I wore a headset for the rest of the time. So that was frustrating. When you're on a show and it's like you're walking uphill through mud to get a shot in the can, it gets old. You're on hour 18. I worked 2 22-hour days in my time in the film industry, and you're ready to strangle somebody by the end of that. can we get on with this? You know, can we get something in the can? And they're just it's taking too long to light. The actors are in fad with the director. Oh, I don't know how to play this part, whatever it is. And it just takes forever. And you're supposed to have wrapped at 7 p.m. and it's 4 in the morning and you're still shooting. And yeah, you're making money. You're making time and a half. It's, you know, you're racking up some bucks, but you know, your feet are hurting and you want to go home and take a shower and go to bed. So that gets a little frustrating. When actors are not the greatest, that can be a little rough. I worked with orchestral company.
We love comics more than I think Red Skull is going to be in Infinity War. I'm your host, Eric.
Nice.
Easily one of the most requested History of episodes over the past year has been Swamp Thing. So many of you guys have asked for this episode that we've lost count. Well, your time has arrived, my friends. Your months of patiently waiting has paid off. Because today, it's all about the Avatar of the Green.
Yeah, that's going to be a good movie. Those are the main things. You know, like any job, there are frustrations, you know, interpersonal or just job obstacles. Not getting a job on a big movie, on something that's going to shoot for many months and you don't get it, you know, that was frustrating. Sometimes, you know, a movie like Iron Man 3, which shot in Wilmington, and I wasn't trying to work on it, but like if that came in and you didn't get that, but you got the crappy little Lifetime movie that was going to shoot for 3 weeks, and they're going to be shooting for 6 months, and you're like, dang, you know, I wish I'd gotten that job. But, you know, you take what you can get. And if you said yes to these guys, and then these guys called you, that's the other thing. You can't really say, well, forget you, I'm going to go, you know, do this. You can, but you're going to get a reputation that you'll leave a show, you know, high and dry. So you'd really tend to have to stay with what you took first. And that happened to me a few times. I took things that bigger things asked, you know, for me to come, and I had to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm doing this other thing, and I'd stick with my show. So that's most of it.
Now, follow up with, what was the big fish that got away that you were most frustrated that you already committed?
Well, when I told the story of Super Mario Brothers, I simplified it a bit. I had actually agreed to be an extra on it, actually, before Cindy had told me on the previous show that she was going to hire me. So I had already signed up to be an extra on it, and I was actually going back and forth because Amos and Andrew and Super Mario were shooting, and they didn't need people every day. So Monday I'd work on that, Tuesday I'd work on this, Wednesday I'd work on this, Thursday I'd work on this kind of thing. And then Cindy called and said, I want you to come work on this. But I was already on it as an extra, and I called the casting company and said, will you release me? Can I go do this other job? And they said, no, you committed to us for a week, and we're going to keep you for a week. The reality was the guy was being a hard nose with me because there were 300 extras filling out a city scene. You really think anybody sitting in the theater would go, hey, there's only 299 extras in there. I want my money back. No. But I had committed. He said, honor your commitment. I honor my commitment. Thankfully, Cindy had a second opportunity come up after I had stopped. I had completed that, and I didn't have to be doing that anymore. She called again. So, but that would have been